Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Microsoft Mentors is designed to lift the lid on the career journeys of the most successful leaders in the Microsoft ecosystem and to share their knowledge, insights, experience and expertise with the wider Microsoft community, offering mentorship at scale. Each week I'll be having open and honest conversations with technology leaders, business owners and technical experts from across the world of Microsoft tech and unpicking their past routes to success, their current models for personal and professional growth and advising you on how to develop the next steps of your cloud career. Stay tuned every week, every Wednesday at midday on LinkedIn Live and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let's grow together. This week on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I am talking to Alex Pearce. Alex is the Chief Strategist for Microsoft and Education at Softcat. For anyone that doesn't know Softcat, they are the UK's #1 value-added reseller and a massive player in the Microsoft space and also in the education technology space. Alex has had an amazing career that started out doing work experience in a school, working through the education technology sector, ultimately then setting up his own business before joining Softcat to lead their Microsoft and education technology strategy team. It's a really interesting conversation. Alex is a 17-time Microsoft MVP. He's currently one of only 6 Microsoft MVPs for Microsoft Copilot, and we dive a little bit deeper into how organizations should approach AI generally, and more specifically, the Copilot solutions and various Copilot tools that are available from Microsoft. Hello and welcome to Microsoft Mentors. This week I am joined by Alex Pearce from Softcat. Hello Alex, how you doing?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me and delighted to be on. So thanks for reaching out and letting me join.
No, absolutely. We've everyone's just missed. Me and Alex have just had a good 5-minute tech conversation about our microphones and our backgrounds and everything. It was very interesting.
I really did enjoy it. It's nice to be able to geek out, and it's a shame that I can't show people what we've got here. Obviously, they're looking at maybe just microphones and us or the backgrounds that we've got, but the setups that we've got in front of us sound quite impressive.
Exactly. It's all about having the right tech to do the right job, isn't it?
Indeed.
So as I've mentioned to you, Alex, Microsoft Mentors, it's all about understanding a little bit more about the career journeys of successful leaders and successful technologists within the Microsoft world. And where I always like to start that is to take it all the way back and almost before your career, understand a little bit about where that initial spark with technology started with you. So what did that look like for you for an early age? Were you, building PCs and laptops in your bedroom, coding away? What was your sort of initial spark in tech?
Yeah, absolutely. It's strange to think how I got into tech, and it was actually through work experience. I didn't necessarily have my own computer. Yes, I had a Sega Master System 2 where I could play Alex the Kid and I could play Sonic and all those kind of things in the bedroom, but I didn't have my own computer as such. My parents did, but I was banned from using it because it kept breaking. It was an old Windows 3.11, and they did publications for the church that we attended. And that was kind of where it started, at least from a family point of view. But for me, as I mentioned, it was all about work experience. I actually lived in Birmingham at the time. I got signed up for work experience to go and work at City Hospital, main hospital in the city. And I turned up on my first day and they went, "Oh, you're a bit younger than we were expecting." I was 14 at the time. And they said, "Oh, you're not allowed to be here if you're that long because you're not insured. So I'm sorry, you'll have to go home." And I was like, right, okay. And like you do as a 14-year-old, you call your mum, say, "Mum, what do I do now if they've sent you home?" I said, "Well, I'll call the school." And she does the mum things. But at the same time, she was a deputy head for a school. And in the room, when she was explaining what was going on to her head teacher, was somebody there setting up computers. It was part of what was called the Dudley Grid for Learning. It was a national
Right.
trial to set up a whole set of network for across the whole of all the schools across the country. And Dudley was the kind of the let's see what it works. Does this work? And you can still see stuff
Yeah.
today about the Dudley Grid for Learning. And this gentleman heard in what was going on and says, well, why doesn't he come and join us for the rest of his work experience? And I did.
Right. Okay.
And I loved it. And I enjoy going off and working in schools and helping them and fixing up their computers and all that kind of side of things. And then I turned around and went, you know what? I enjoyed it so much. Can I come back at October half term? And that's when I went into year 11. And they were like, yeah, sure. And they gave me a £50 voucher at the end of that week because I really did enjoy it. And they obviously took some value for me being there as well. However, I then sent them an email going, you know what? I've signed up for an apprenticeship and I'm looking for a job as part of the apprenticeship. Is there anything coming up, anything I could apply for? And they went, yeah, you start on the 3rd of September, £6 an hour. This was back in 2000. And that was where I entered into IT. And that's where the passion came from, was because I enjoyed the work. I enjoy the kind of the excitement, the fixing, the troubleshooting. Those are the things that I still enjoy today.
£6 an hour as well back in 2000 was probably quite a good wage for a 16-year-old.
I wasn't complaining. I was still living with my parents. All that money was mine, and they didn't want to charge me rent at first anyway. But it was great as a 16-year-old getting the bus because I was only 16. I did my apprenticeship for the year, and you know what? That was great. I was living it. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. Come the age of 17, I wasn't doing any more education, and I was full into work. Obviously my career grew from the age of 16. So I was 40 last week, dare I say that. That means I've now been working in IT for 24 years, which is scary in itself. But you know what? I don't regret any of the decisions, even getting into it when I was 16.
No, and I think that apprenticeship route is a route that I see a lot of successful people having come through. I think it accelerates your career because you're just in the working world a lot earlier than a lot of people that go through, more traditional routes into their career. So during that time in that apprenticeship, was that with that Dudley trust, so working within the education sector to build out and deliver sort of IT solutions into schools?
So I applied to Dudley College, and that was kind of the college down the road for me where I could do the apprenticeship. And I actually was offered 2 jobs. I could go and work for this IT provider inside of schools, RM, Research Machines, if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah.
Or I could go and work for the council. I was offered a job for the council. And being honest with you, when you're offered £6 an hour or £40 a week, I wonder which one people are going to accept. Now, there was actually a better career opportunity actually from a RM and working for RM, and what happened there, being in the hardware department, doing the troubleshooting, all that kind of stuff against £40 a week, where they couldn't guarantee you exactly what you were going to do. You got a pay rise when you turn 17 to £50 a week. I'm a July baby, so I was going to have to wait a lot longer before I got my extra £10 a week. So it didn't seem quite fair for me, but that apprenticeship was great. I learned a lot from it. I have a little kind of secret that I've never let my mother know. I never actually completed the apprenticeship. I never got the certificate. I never put the final piece of work in. But sometimes this is why I explain to students, and when I mentor people, I say to them, the most important thing is your exams now. Once you go to that next stage, it's about those set of results. So your GCSE results don't really matter once you've got to your A levels or you've got to your apprenticeship and that kind of side of things. So don't worry too much. Focus on them, deliver on them, get to that next step in your goal, and then focus purely on those, because your GCSE results. When was the last time somebody asked you about your GCSE results to get a job?
Yeah.
Or
I couldn't.
They're not important.
It would take some digging through the grey matter in my brain to even remember what my GCSE results were. And like you say, it's stepping stones, isn't it? You get the right results you need to get onto the A levels that you want to do, and then you get the results in A level if you want to go to uni that you need to get into your uni course, and it's just incremental steps, isn't it? To sort of that early part. Okay, and then out sort of the back of the apprenticeship, what did the next few years of your career look like in terms of the types of organisations that you worked within and the types of sort of technologies that you were working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went from, as I say, working at RM. I only did a year at RM before I went and worked for a computer programming book writing company called Rox Press.
Okay.
If you're into your IT and you've known it for a number of years, you may remember they did these red books, pictures of the author on the front of them, and you may well be able to see on a bookshelf that you've still got some there for C# and Visual Basic .NET, all that kind of stuff. But I was their IT guy. There was 7 of us when I joined, and there was one guy in India and one guy in America. And as unfortunately the company started, they didn't kind of regenerate the business enough and going digital, because people don't all buy books nowadays, and they weren't in
Yeah.
kind of leading up to 2004. Unfortunately, the business went under, and I was in New Zealand at the time, spending some time with my cousin, and I got 2 emails, one saying, "Oh, Alex, send me an email when you're free," and the other one is, "Alex, don't come home, the company's gone bust."
Oh God.
So it's just typical, one of those things. I thoroughly enjoyed being, and I ended up being the only IT person inside the UK. So everybody else left or were made redundant, and I was the one that was excelling, looking after all the servers, the web servers, the internal servers. We had a massive 3-day outage of an on-prem Exchange environment, but I got to spend all the time on the phone to the Exchange team. And I learned all about kind of EDB databases, I think it was, ODB databases, all those kind of things. And I built a really good back-end knowledge around Exchange, which helped me further on in my career.
Yeah.
But it did mean I was redundant. And again, my mother stepped in, being the head teacher. She was talking to somebody in the playground, and they asked how I was doing. And they said, "Oh, why didn't you come and do some volunteering at the school that I work at?" And I went and did that volunteering while I looked for another job. And I became like a traveling IT person in Birmingham city centre in the UK. And I did that for a year. But that 3 months of volunteering I did within the school meant that when their network managers left, they asked me and invited me to apply for that job. And on my 20th birthday, I started as the network manager inside of a school. And I stayed there for 4 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was absolutely great to think that, and I still have this passion today to think that I can help students. I can kind of help them from an IT point of view, work with staff to improve their skills. It is a passion that I had as a 20-year-old, all the way through to what I have today as a 40-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And obviously that trend of working in technology for education, like you say, is something that was there at the start and has gone through your career. What would you say that the biggest changes and the technologies that have had the biggest impact on education over that sort of course of your career?
Yeah, so it's obviously this cloud computing thing, and the whole idea that Microsoft started offering free services. Now, before Office 365 and Microsoft 365, they offered a free service called Live Edu, which was the live services. If you remember, kind of your Hotmail, your
Yeah,
OneDrive, and SkyDrive, as it probably called at the time, and all that, they offered that out for free, and then that migrated to Office 365, Microsoft 365. Every education establishment, whether it's a school, university, whatever it is around the world, can get both the Google platform and the Microsoft platform for free. That's absolutely amazing. That's groundbreaking. That's changing. And I remember when I started running my own business a few years later, that just changed us from a business point of view as well.
yeah, yeah. And I think, like you say, the ability for education providers to access that level of technology that is, ultimately built and operated at, large enterprise organization level, for them to be able to access that and use it to drive education is, it's amazing, isn't it, really? Hats
Yeah.
off to Microsoft and Google and other vendors for supporting education in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where some of it started for me, from my relationship with Microsoft, that back in around 2004 it was, I started at this school. They had 2 purchase orders or 2 quotes. One was to rebuild the whole network with a third-party provider, and the other one was to build an on-prem SharePoint environment for learning.
Yeah.
They didn't have the funds for the on-prem learning, but during the summer holidays, back in 2005 it was, I got bored. So I thought, well, I'll install this thing called SharePoint. I'll see what this can do. And I learned how to customize it, to rebrand it. It was all on-prem. I learned how to use ISA server. If people remember ISA server from the technology and certificates point of view, I could publish it out. They could use mail. That's single sign-on. It really started to transform it. And Microsoft noticed that. And I got invited to go and speak at Microsoft events. BET is a big teacher technology show inside in the UK, normally around January time. I mean, there's about 30, 40,000 people that turn up for that show. And I was on the Microsoft stands talking about what it is. And eventually I'd done so much at many of them in 2008, I got recognized by Microsoft for all that community efforts, for speaking at events, speaking and putting things out on the blogs as it was at the time. And I was awarded as a Microsoft MVP, as a SharePoint MVP. So I'm very grateful that I get to be a Microsoft MVP, both then and also today as well.
Yeah, and you've done my next segue for me there, Alex, because that's the next part that I want to sort of get a feel for with you. So obviously, is it 17 years now as an MVP, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's quite scary that 17 years. I've got family members that are younger than that, and I it's about the community, and you see a lot of people talk about how they're honoured and humbled, and I truly am from how grateful I am that it's an award that I get from Microsoft. I'm assessed every year around that contribution, but I talked about my passions earlier on about sharing and keeping students, but hang on a minute, if I can share that knowledge with other people, can it help other students? And I was awarded SharePoint MVP, and over the years, Microsoft have changed the way the MVP program works. So I was then kind of put into a category as such. So I became a Microsoft Apps and Services, as they call it, Microsoft 365 Apps and Services, and that's where I sit in from a category point of view. And this year, they've brought these technology-focused areas. So I'm delighted that I'm one of 3,000 MVP in the world. I'm one of 62 Copilot MVPs in the world and one of 6 Copilot MVPs in the UK. So it just kind of shows where that passion and where that technology has grown over those years. And where that desire comes from. My desire is to share and to impact more and more people. And I hope that continues to come across, whether I'm an MVP or not.
Yeah. And I think I've always said that for me, the Microsoft tech community has got to be one of the most collaborative and most engaged tech communities anywhere in the world. I think the MVP side helps that, but you look at even all the people that are outside of the MVP world that are contributing, and you look at the different technology user groups that are all across the countries, across Azure, across Power Platform, data, all these communities where people are going, right, I've got all this knowledge within my head and within my business, and I know how that impacts the organization that I work with or my customers. But what's everyone else doing, and what can I learn from them, and what can they learn from me? And having these really open forums where everyone's using the knowledge and skills that they're developing to develop the skills and knowledge of the wider community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where a lot of that passion comes from. And as you say, it's right to point out that lots of people do this outside of the MVP program. They don't do it because of the MVP program. They do it because they want to share. And that's what community is about. It's about sharing and building and helping to build and help other people, whether that is in the education space, which has always been kind of a focus area for me, or actually financial services, or just because you love SharePoint or Teams or Intune or Xbox. If you want to be an Xbox MVP, wouldn't it be great to be able to get more insight into games and early access and all that kind of side of things? But it just shows that there's passion, and that's where actually builds community.
No, absolutely. And so you're working in the school, you're starting off getting involved more with Microsoft, MVP starts coming along, and then there's a decision point where you decide to start up your own business. So what did that
so there were one or two factors that kind of kicked in. I ended up going off and working for another school first. So this is where I joined the largest school in Europe at the time, the largest secondary school. Okay. And I was their learning gateway. That was this on-prem version of SharePoint and learning. And I thoroughly enjoyed my 18 months there before I saw a role going for what was called the Building Schools for the Future. BSF, as it was a Labour initiative, And I lasted a year there before the change of government came in and went, we're not giving you any of that funding now. And obviously I was made redundant. So back in about 2010, 2011, I thought, you know what, I'm going to set up my own business. I know I can help schools. I can help and I can go off and I can support them with their SharePoint on-prem, as it still was, their Exchange installs, their ISA installs, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember that I was bidding for a piece of work for a very well-known school that do a lot of SharePoint stuff, and they used to support a lot of other schools with their SharePoint. It was all on-prem, and we started quoting up and sending it to Office 365. But the problem at the time was that the cost of the licensing was huge. It was going to cost them over £100,000 to license their staff and students every single year. So this was before the announcement that it was going to end up being free. And I put in my bid and I said, I'm going to have to make an amendment in 2 weeks' time. And they're like, why is that? I said, I can't tell you. It's under NDA. I can't tell you, but I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I sent the amendment in saying, oh, by the way, that £100,000 worth of licensing has now disappeared. And surprise, surprise, I won the bid because it was all about that migration. So I continued to run what was my company called BFC Networks. I thoroughly enjoyed all my time there. I guess the only thing I didn't enjoy doing was my VAT returns. I hate VAT returns. For anybody that's run a business, you'll understand exactly what I mean. Doing and going through every single transaction and whether it's got VAT or not, if it's inside the EU or not in the EU and UK, or it's outside the US. And when you've got Azure billing, you'll understand that actually that is really annoying because you've got to go and check every single one. But I thoroughly enjoyed running that, and I wanted to kind of do a bit more of a productize kind of things. I didn't want to just do services, and I built a provisioning engine. I was sat in a Microsoft conference in the US, an education thing. Microsoft had kind of given us some money to build out kind of a bit of an assignment tool. They wanted to build an assignment tool inside of SharePoint, and we built one. But all of a sudden, up on stage, kind of the president of education said, we're going to build something called Microsoft Classroom. And I went, I've just spent a lot of money in a product and I'm going to have to stick it straight in the bin because no one's going to buy it from me if it's free built in the platform. Now, they ended up killing that and they ended up putting it into Teams, which was their right decision. You got Teams education, you got assignments, you got all that kind of side of things. But I sat there and I had the education director from the UK next to me and I went, what's going on here? And he said, we're always going to innovate. We're always going to change. It's about how you adopt and how you change. So I built a provisioning engine that could adapt and change to anything that Microsoft could add to the network, to its 365 environment. So if they all of a sudden, as they did, they introduced Teams, I could rapidly implement an implementation that could pull things from timetables, student accounts, teachers' details, and put it into SharePoint, into Teams, into school data sync, create distribution lists, make changes to multiple tenants at the same time. And that was a huge opportunity because all I had to do was keep those, I call them templates, new feature, new template, go off and implement them. And the product did very well from that point of view, which kind of took us up to kind of the COVID years as such. Because when the government came out and said every school have got to do remote learning, I just happened to have the right tool at the right time. It wasn't built for a pandemic. Let's make that very clear. No. But it meant that when the DFE came out, the Department for Education in the UK turned around and said, I want you to be able to make sure that every class have got a Microsoft Teams, that it's got multiple teachers in it, it's got certain policies set in place, create all the student accounts and all that kind of stuff. I could just go, you know what, I need to create one or two little changes on those templates based on the guidance, which I wrote, but the guidance, and I could go off and implement that. And that's where some of my relationships started with Softcat today.
Yeah, and it's interesting that about the pandemic and the impact that had, because firsthand, my wife's a PE teacher, she gets sent home in the pandemic and is given the task of trying to run some sort of PE session on Teams with 30 kids. So you add on there not only the challenge of getting the technology piece aligned, which took a little bit of time for them as a sort of an academy's trust, but they got there. But then for my wife to then not only have to deliver sort of a classroom-based lesson, but having to deliver some sort of physical education Joe Wicks style over Teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite entertaining for me to watch it, trying to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. There was I had some really interesting stories that I heard. I got invited in by Microsoft. I guess because I've got that technical knowledge and they had that confidence in me being an MVP and the NDAs that I got, I was able to come in and they said, look, we need someone to actually write the guidance around what a tenancy should look like. So I produced the kind of that tenancy recommendation that went out to all the partners that could go off and sell it. But the stories that we heard internally at Microsoft around the success stories around how remote learning was being done was phenomenal. It's absolutely great, and very proud of that kind of time that I was able to support more students in a critical time. And thinking of it now, I've not said this for a couple of years. I feel quite emotional about that. The fact that I was be able to use my skills, my knowledge, to be able to turn around and help thousands of teachers and students during what was a difficult time.
Yeah, absolutely, and it shows what technology can do, and the impact that it can have in all of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. And then, so you go through that journey of building your own business, and then you transition into your role now at Softcat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, I had this tool, Pervisio, as it was called, I did a deal with Softcat, which meant they could resell my product and take advantage of this voucher scheme that the government was doing. I couldn't do it personally; I wasn't on the right frameworks and all that kind of side of things. And Softcat are a very big value-added reseller. In fact, they're the number one. I'm going to say that because I work there now. We're the number one, and we're on all sorts of frameworks, which enables us to be able to provision all sorts of stuff to the public sector. And eventually we came to a deal which enabled me to be able to join Softcat as well. And I joined the office of the CTO. I was going to be our chief technologist for education. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. I was in the advisory part of the office of the CTO. So this was about 3 years ago now. And I loved it. Absolutely loved that. And being able to, and still do today, work with, I've spoken to CEOs for Multi-Academy Trust, advising them what a Multi-Academy Trust IT environment should look like, talking about the well-being of people and structure through to how you can save money and bringing contracts together and all that kind of stuff. So using my education experience with that. And about a year ago, as the advisory team broke out separately from the office of the CTO, and I came our chief strategist, I ended up being the chief strategist for both Microsoft and for education. So I get to actually talk about Microsoft Copilot, SharePoint, Microsoft 365, even on-prem stuff with any of our customers, whether that's public sector, corp, education. It doesn't matter from my point of view. But I also get to do that kind of education advisory kind of side of things. This is how you should consider setting up your IT environments, your staffing and your structure, and writing digital strategies. I've just written a digital strategy for a university, which was challenging, really insightful to learn around what kind of challenges higher education are having at this moment in time, but really rewarding. And that's how I joined Softcat and why I'm still there today and will continue to stay at Softcat, because they're a great place to work.
No, definitely. And so with your sort of current role at Softcat, what does that look like in terms of your day to day? Are you very much on the sort of strategy advisory side? Do you get down and dirty and still get involved with, doing the hands-on tech side of things? What do you sort of split in there at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, as I said from the very start, I'm a troubleshooter. I love troubleshooting, and I guess I don't get to do that technology side of things because we've got some very good people that probably know it better than I do now, because that's what they focus on. They spend all their time on going off and delivering that technology kind of side of things. But my foundations of understanding how that technology means I can turn around and say, right, if you're going to implement Copilot for Microsoft 365, here's a target operating model around how you should be implementing it. So you need to think about what are the outputs they want, training them on the different features, got training them on prompting, bringing in data, and let's talk around what the product really is doing. And I actually really enjoy that. I enjoyed taking all that technology, and then when I get challenged, I get put, well, does the technology actually do this? I actually know the answer too. And that's where I still spend my own personal time learning the technology. What can it do? Playing with it. I've got my own development environments, all that kind of side of things. So I guess the tech has now become a hobby. The strategy has become the job. but the job's a hobby as well because I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously having you, Alex, and the knowledge that you've got, and especially now being an MVP for Copilot. Copilot is obviously a big flagship product that lots of organisations are either already looking at implementing or it's on their roadmap to sort of implement at some point. So I guess just to dive into that a little bit more, and especially on the strategy side of things, if organisations are looking at Copilot, what would you say are the first sort of building blocks that they need to think about before they get to a point being ready to actually roll it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I normally start off is talking to customers about is that there's not one Copilot. When you speak to people from Microsoft and the people who say Copilot, they're probably meaning Copilot for Microsoft 365, the Word, the Excel, the PowerPoint, the Teams, and all that kind of side of things. Well, there's actually a product called Copilot. You can get it for free. You can log in with your Hotmail, your Outlook account. And this is the Chat GPT with the Bing index being able to go off. So you can say what's in the news today. You can use the DALL-E 3 to create images. It's great fun. I love that. And internal training sessions I do, I get them to try and make a purple Softcat. So it's just kind of a bit of fun. And that's what you can go off and you can do. One of the great things with that, because all organizations get this as part of their Microsoft 365 licensing, is go and open up Edge, click on the Copilot button in the top right-hand corner, and you can ask it to summarize that page that you've already got open. Really powerful. Can you summarize this and send it out and write it as an email to Dave, and to be able to say, you know what, he is the CEO of a utilities company. Can you make sure that you alter the text into the right language for them? That's a really powerful thing. So that's what they get. That's what you're already getting. And many organizations forget they've actually got AI already. So let's start off with that kind of side of things. And then you've got stuff built into Windows 11. You've got the Copilot for Windows 11. It's built into Windows 11. So hang on, it's another Copilot you've already got before you spent any money. How are you utilizing those? So let's start with that utilization before anything else. And then we can start talking about, well, what are you trying to achieve from an AI point of view? If you want Copilot for Microsoft 365, what do you want to be able to go off and do? And I asked organizations, how many products are there inside of that Copilot for Microsoft 365 license? And they normally can lift off 6: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Teams, and Excel. I think I might have repeated one, but those are the main 6 that they kind of say. There's 16. It's going to be 17 soon. So if you're going to take advantage of Copilot for Microsoft 365, how are you going to ensure that you use all the products like Loop, Purview, Whiteboard, SharePoint, Stream? These are all part of the same license. So if you're going to go off and ask for $30 per user per month, how are you going to fully utilize the application and take full advantage of all those different things? Are you taking full advantage of your Microsoft 365 licenses? Loop is going to be a key product moving forwards. Are you doing anything with Loop? Because you're paying for it. So you need to be able to use it. So this is kind of where that strategic conversation then starts coming in. And my slides aren't there to do demos, but they are there to be able to say, this is how you take advantage of the Copilot architecture, because you've got Copilot. You've got Copilot for Windows 11. You've got Copilot for Microsoft 365. And then even to build on top of that, you've got Copilot Studio, where you can build your own Copilots based on data that you feed it. And when you speak to C-Level Suite around that, they go, wow, I didn't realize there was so much on there. I didn't know we could already do stuff already. And one of the things that I would turn around and challenge any organization is, it's not just about the training around how you can use the Copilot features. It's about prompting. The key thing is all about prompting. And I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples. I've just given you one as part of analyzing a web page and turning it and asking to write an email based on the persona perception and giving it to somebody. That's really key. I can turn to Copilot chat, looking at my data. So that's just my OneDrive, my SharePoint files that I have access to, and my mailbox. And I can say, what's in my mailbox today? And it pulls through 4 or 5 items. That's all it will do. Great. That's what people are doing. They're going off and using that very simple prompt. Why not turn around and do a prompt, something along the lines of, can you build me a table? Look at my mailbox, my @signs, and any messages that are key inside my team's environments. Prioritize them 1 to 10. Fill the table around when that action needs to be completed by, what the action is, and the recommended action output that you think I should be doing to complete it. All of a sudden, that's a very different type of productivity, because I've taught somebody how to prompt. And if you use the teams to be able to turn around at the end of a meeting and say, what are my action points? You're missing an opportunity. The Microsoft research paper that came out to the future of work, it came out earlier on this year. It talked about the use of large language models. And one of the examples they use is something called micro productivity. Micro productivity is all about being able to say, you know what, at the end of that team's meeting, let's just say, Alex, you need to lose weight. And you go, oh, okay, great. I'll go off and I'll do my action of try and lose weight. Why not turn around to it and say, how do I complete that task? How do I lose weight? And he might turn around and say, you know what? You need to have an exercise plan, a food plan, 10,000 steps, standing at your desk more often, walk around more often during the day if you sit at your desk all day. And then you can say, can you ask me 10 questions around foods that I like and then build me a food plan? And all of a sudden you've got 60, 70, 80% of the task completed just because you've had the conversation with a Copilot, with an AI, with a large language model. That's the true power, and the return on AI is learning how to prompt. That's where we are at this moment in time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even from personal experience of using tools like ChatGPT and Copilot Chat and things, the prompting thing is the bit that I've always struggled to get right. And I always think for me, one of the reasons behind that is because I'm so built in search engines. So I'm used to asking a simple question to a search engine, because before all of these technologies, if you asked a search engine too much, you would get the wrong results or you just confuse it. So changing the mindset in terms of actually, I can ask multiple layers within a Copilot or within an AI chat. I can ask them for, to talk about a topic, to break that topic down, to analyze that topic from a certain perspective and give me a certain outlook or outcome from it. Learning how to do those prompts is a learning process in itself, because I think for me, as I say, we're so built, or have been so built, on really simple search strings that we have used historically in search engines.
Absolutely. And that's the challenge to the C-level suite when I speak to them is, how are you going to invest in your people around prompting? Because you can't just give them a license and go, there you go, because you won't get the return on investment that you could be getting from from it. And then if you can teach them to learn the prompting, is that an IT thing or is that a learning development team, the adoption team? Who owns prompting? Who's going to own that? Because you could train everybody now, but what are you going to do when somebody new starts? How are you going to train them? So you have to look at it as a whole project and a whole business organization to be able to go off and deliver that. And I think that's another really key thing, is that you really do focus on the people aspect of Copilot and how you train them, and you will transform your organization when you do that. Because all of a sudden, let's just say you use something like Salesforce, they had large language model support. You've already trained your users how to do prompting. They can go off and they can use the same clever things that they've learned in other places in that large language model or another product.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does that sort of learning and development piece feed into your role at Softcat? Are you working internally at Softcat to sort of build out that knowledge base around Copilots and AI as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have this conversation. Most 90% of my time is speaking to customers, right? So this is what I talk to them about on a daily basis. You asked me earlier on, what do I do? This is what I do. Exactly almost a conversation. I've got a whole bunch of slides. I've got a bit of cheese wheel. I talk about the Copilot Studio and how you can build out agents and all that kind of side of things. So when we've looked at it from an internal point of view, absolutely, we still got to train them how to use the product, but we've got to train them how to do prompting as well. One that particularly comes to mind is I got to sit down with our women in business. We had two teams, or I think they have a meeting every month. They spend 2 hours together, and I had that privilege to come and speak to them around Copilot. The first thing I got them doing was open up Copilot. So that's the one you get as part of your Microsoft licensing already. And I got them to create some images just to get playing with what prompting looks like. That's the foundations. You can get them to have some fun. And all of a sudden they go, you know what, I understand it a bit more now. Because you may well build yourself a lovely looking purple cat inside of the back of an exhibition hall, as somebody did. But then you can ask it to put a hat on the cat. And it does another image for you. Yeah. And then you can say, can you get it so it says number 1 employee in the UK? and you can get it so it puts the text at the bottom. You can build these things up. So you're using the prompting, and I thoroughly enjoy doing that with different departments. And it's not just the normal marketing and sales and IT, but there's things like the PMO office. How can they use Copilot? How can the recruitment team go off and use some of the features inside of Power BI, where you can ask Copilot to be able to analyze the job description to the person's response? But you can also turn it around and go, you know what? Can you also analyze it based on the 5 key areas of Softcat's passion, culture, intelligence, and what do they say around it? And as the AI, I want you to score it out of 10 and then tell me at the end if you think they should be taken through to an interview stage. These are the technologies you get as part of your Copilot license. And these are the things that we're looking at internally on how to use Copilot.
Yeah, and I think it it highlights a wider point, doesn't it, as well? And I think you mentioned it earlier that so many organisations away from the Copilot side of things and just within, your traditional M365 licenses, there are so many tools and so many features within existing M365 licenses that businesses don't even know that they have, let alone know how to use or implement. They don't even know that they're there. And it's part of that journey, isn't it, of understanding, I guess, before you even go down that track, what's in there already that you need to be using before you even start pushing down that Copilot pathway.
Absolutely. It's one of the value adds that I do to our customers is telling them not necessarily the Copilot stuff, but what you're getting. What's in that roadmap? We've got things like Clipchamp. People go, what's Clipchamp? A designer and how the designer surface is going in. We've got new SharePoint design pages. So it's not classic and we've gone to modern as the next version. No, we've got new pages that they've announced that we're doing. We're now in version 3 of OneDrive. I didn't know we had a version 1 and 2 when I heard Microsoft say that. But what does that actually mean? This is where we want to make sure, at least from a Softcat point of view, and I kind of enjoy doing this, is teaching our organization, teaching our customers that to fully use the applications, you want to get the full advantage of what you're investing in Microsoft from that licensing. You've got to remember these core technologies, because as an MVP, I get a bit of insight into kind of where the roadmaps are going and all that. But you soon start to learn that, as they've released that designer thing and they put that up on the roadmap, it's going to get integrated into several products. So it's really important that we start to look at what that actually truly means.
Yeah. And from a personal perspective, Alex, how do you, because obviously the rate of change in anything that's Microsoft technology related is always accelerated, and it seems even more accelerated now than maybe it ever has done. So how do you personally keep track and keep up to date and make sure that you're learning and evolving with that rapidly changing technology landscape?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's something I've had for a number of years. And I guess it's following the right things. So whether you're on X, Twitter, or LinkedIn and following the right people, being in the SharePoint world, I'm going to follow the Microsoft 365 ones, the product team. You see these people standing up on stage at things like Build and Ignite. Follow them on LinkedIn because they're posting around what the changes are all the time. Keeping an eye on those Microsoft blogs, what's going on. Again, these are all kind of fed into Twitter X to be able to say, this is what I can go off and I can see them very quickly. So it becomes, very quickly I just look through my feed. Oh, Microsoft have announced something around Teams rooms and how actually we can use voice controls to be able to get Copilot to pick up. That's great stuff. Now I need to learn a bit more around that. I'll read the article, digest it and all that kind of stuff. And as you do that, like I've been fortunate enough to be able to do for 16, 17, 18 years from those platforms point of view, you build the knowledge up and you follow the right people, you find out the product teams, all that kind of stuff. But invest your time in the free resources that you get from Microsoft. Build, Ignite, the 2 big technical conferences that Microsoft do on a yearly basis are free online. You can watch every single session on there. You can learn a lot. You can't do all that when you're in person because you can only do 1 session at a time. But you can build your own session tracker, your schedule. You go, there's 4 sessions. Today, I'm going to watch those 4 sessions while I'm going to listen into how do Azure DB databases work? How can I build out that kind of thing? So you all of a sudden start to understand what's more coming from that Microsoft kind of point of view. So when you get when you get asked that question at work, how does that work? You go, well, I watched something back at Microsoft Build and I learned this, and you can start to share more around that knowledge. So yeah, follow the right things, follow the right people, follow the MVPs. They're the ones that Microsoft are saying they're talking really good stuff. Follow the corporate vice president. Jeff Teeper is a great one to follow. He's the corporate vice president for, I think it's collaboration now across Microsoft.
Yeah.
Teams, SharePoint, Yammer, Stream, OneDrive, those are the things that he owns. And he gives out, these are the latest things. And interestingly, over the last couple of weeks, he's gone, we've just kind of finalized what we're going to be doing over the next 3 years. I'm super excited by that. But if he's going to say that now, he's also going to tell you what's happening in the near future too.
Yeah. It's all about knowing where to have your information streams coming in from, isn't it? And then keeping track of those information streams, because like you say, the rate of change is continuous now, and it's about knowing what's on the roadmap so that when it comes downstream into general availability, that you're ready to start strategizing and having conversations internally about how that could impact your business. And it may be, okay, we've looked at it and it's not right for us, we don't need it, or it might be, look, we need to get on that as fast as possible.
Absolutely. It's a ladder. I like to describe things as a ladder. You start at the bottom of a ladder and you take a step up. You can't jump to the very top. You can't know everything straight away. You've got to start with those foundations. You take one step, you go up, you learn a bit more, you go to the next step, you change jobs. That's another step up. Sometimes you can even slip on a ladder. You take a step or two down, but you can very quickly start to work that ladder back up. So if you can take it as small steps, small little learning things, one step at a time, you will soon reach the top.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Alex, we're now going to dive into my Microsoft Mentors quickfire round.
I've heard, yes. I have no idea what the questions are, do I? So let's see what you've got.
No. So it'll be around eight to 10 questions. If we can try and get sort of one sentence or sort of short paragraph
I can
answers.
talk for England, can't I? So I'll try and keep it short, I promise.
And some of them are tech related, some of them are not. So let's see where we end up on the other side of the quickfire round. So the first one is you're hosting a dinner party. You've got 3 seats at the table and you can invite 3 tech innovators, past, present or future. Who would they be?
No, I think Jeff Teeper would be one of them that I mentioned on from that point of view. Unfortunately, when you said technology, all the other people that were in my head dropped out. So it would have been David Beckham, if I'm honest with you, from that point of view. I said I'll try and keep it short. I only had one other person, Bill Clinton. I know that sounds weird, but he came and spoke at a SharePoint conference once, and he talked about how tech was helping aid inside of Haiti because there'd just been a big earthquake there, and that was really interesting. Yeah. So to hear from a business leader how tech can transform and help people.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your favourite Microsoft product of all time and why? One product.
One product. It would have been Microsoft Class Server. It was a product that came out 2003, disappeared after 3 years, but it did actually start the whole online revolution, and it should still be the product that runs Teams today, personally, because it was absolutely fantastic. Awesome.
Outside of technology and outside of work, what's your go-to pastime or hobby?
I do enjoy my football. I've had a new baby. We've got Harrison's now 5 months this week. So very much a family man more than necessarily anything else. I love a bit of sport. So spending time with the family.
Yeah. What's your football team?
I'm an Aston Villa fan.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm a Brummie at the end of the day, and some people say I've got a strong Brummie accent. I don't have that much. I'm a bit of a Black Country, bit of a yam as well as a bit of a Brummie. But no, I'm an Aston Villa fan.
Well, I have an issue with Aston Villa, and that is I'm a Derby County fan.
Oh, that's a real shame because my uncles are a Derby County fan, so I can talk all sorts of things about how we beat you and we went into the Premier League and you went bust instead.
And that's my issue with Villa, is the trajectory from that tipping point of that playoff final is you've gone to the Champions League and we went down to League One. Yeah. There we go. If you hadn't been a technologist or worked in tech, what would you have done?
I enjoyed drawing buildings when I was young. I'd love to have gone into architecture. And if I didn't do IT now, I'd love to go back into that. Still can't draw, but if I can do it on a CAD design, that'd be great. But yeah, architecture.
Yeah, cool. What's your favourite work productivity hack? Whether that's a tech or just a personal process.
I think I've already given this away earlier on. Prompting. Do the right prompt, you'll get a lot more out of things.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I was 19 when I was taught this, and I still believe it's true today. I was taught to say no. No, you can't have that software. No, I can't make that configuration change. No, and give the reasons why. But if you can learn to tell people the answer is no, actually they'll respect you more.
Yeah. It's always a difficult word to say as well, isn't it? Sometimes, especially with customers when they're asking for things. But like you say, sometimes you've just got to stand by your point and say, no, I don't think that's the right route, the right direction.
I agree. And the other one just to say is, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I'll go find out. That's the other thing I was taught by the same person at the same time. It was no. And to learn to say no and say, I don't know. Don't be scared. It's okay that you don't know. They'll respect the fact that you go off, you find the answer and you give them the response back. And they'll also come back to you again in the future because you actually went off and found the answer, not just because you said, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. What's one common mistake that you see people making in their IT careers and how can they avoid it?
I don't think I see necessarily one common thing. That's a really hard question because it's about what they want to be able to do with their career. People want to stay in a particular role and they're happy there and they want to keep developing their knowledge in a single product. That's absolutely fine. In the same way that some people want to be able to progress. So nothing massively comes to mind other than stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself. And if you continue to do what you'll do and you go on that line, you'll enjoy it. If you don't, you'll get yourself stuck and you'll get stuck in there. So continue to do what you want to be able to do as a passion.
Yeah. Awesome. And final question. This is my favourite. I think this tells me and tells our listeners a lot about what a person's personality is. So it's a Friday night, Alex. You've had a hard week at work and you're ordering a takeaway. Do you go for Indian, Chinese or chippy? And what's your order?
The answer to that question is whatever the girlfriend wants. It's not about what I want. It's about what she wants. Is it a chippy? Is it Chinese? Is it an Indian? If she wants a Nando's, we're having a Nando's.
Oh yeah, that's a good curveball in there. I think for me, it's normally either chippy or Chinese. But I live in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, so it's a drive for a takeaway. We don't have anyone that can deliver to us. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, living in Telford as I do now, you can get a Waggers, you can get a Nando's. So last night, I kind of said to Bex, my partner, said, so are we doing a Waggers tonight or are we doing Nando's? And she couldn't make a decision, and we ended up with a Nando's. So it'd either probably be a Waggers or a Nando's. But normally Friday night, it's with the family, it's with the kids. They're not bothered by pizza or... they're not bothered by Indian or Chinese. They're more bothered by pizza. Yeah. So it ends up being a Domino's.
Yeah, Domino's is always a good shout. Awesome. Well, Alex, thanks very much for your time. It's been a really interesting conversation. Great to understand a little bit more about your early career and how that's sort of driven into driving tech change in education and ultimately to your role now at Softcat and all the work that you're doing around Microsoft 365 and Copilot and that whole technology space. So thanks very much for your time. I will let you know in the next few days when we're going to release this one, just working out the last bit of the schedule. But thanks for your time, mate.
Nice one. Cheers. Appreciate it.
That was good fun. Thanks, Alex.